Do you know what it's like to be abandoned? To see familiar faces one day, only for the next to be met with painful silence and restless sorrow. Maybe the shapes of those faces changed over time, where once they may have been kind and hospitable, now they're violent and bloodthirsty. If these stone walls could talk, they would spin you such a story. So today, my friends, let us delve together so that we might honor the rise, fall, and reinvigoration of the Halatali dungeons. Halatali wasn't always a ruined network of caves filled with cages, monsters, and madness. In truth, these halls have an incredible significance to history. When the Lalafels first traveled north from their southern islands and landed on Eorzea, they spread out. Their curious and adventurous nature inspired them to travel far and wide, to get a lay of the lands and appraise them. Many of them settled on the Isle of Vilbrand, eventually establishing the city-state of Nim. But another group landed on southern Eorzea before steadily moving up the coast, eventually creating the city-state of Mok, located in the northwest of Eorzea's center. But before moving northward, the Lalafell that landed in what would eventually be Thanalan stumbled upon something. What they found was a large yet elaborate series of natural caves with plenty of space and a strong foundation. This of course encouraged them to build something. What they built was Halatali. Halatali was originally a holy temple. In the ancient Lalafellan tongue, Halatali means the land of many shadows, and so the caves became a place of rest, worship, and calm philosophy. These halls were a sanctuary to wandering pilgrims, as well as men and women of the cloth. But as the Lalafellan city-states of Nim and Mok became the superpowers they were known for, fewer and fewer people began to pass through Halatali. Eventually, no one was crossing through these lands anymore, and the clerks attending to this place steadily began to die out, one after another, until the halls of Halatali were completely silent. Halatali wouldn't see another set of faces until the 6th Astral Era with the arrival of Belladia. It can be assumed that, even though it was abandoned, Halatali was still considered a holy place to the Lalafell, and shouldn't be disturbed unnecessarily. This would explain how it remained untouched for so long, despite the rise and fall of Belladia. Though many historians suggest that Halatali was rediscovered by the city-state and actually stood once more as a sanctuary for a brief time. But after the War of Succession, which ripped Belladia apart, and the sister nation of Sildi was destroyed, Ul'dah had complete control over the arid hills of Thanalan, and they were eager to make full use of all their assets. The quiet and sacred halls of Halatali would soon be disturbed, and eventually stained with blood. Having always been an elaborate set of natural caves, Halatali had room to spare, with many halls and corridors. This eventually saw the caves of Halatali fall into the hands of the Gladiators Guild. All this space wasn't being used, so the guild decided to make use of it. After all, Ul'dah's Coliseum had become a hotspot for blood sport and illegal gambling. So why not use these empty halls to train new gladiators and store exotic monsters? People may ask or wonder why Ul'dah would sanction such brutality within their walls, much less dedicate an entire cave network to it. Honestly, the answer is rather simple: money. While betting on fights like those in the Coliseum are strictly illegal, it's a law that almost no one follows and is rarely enforced. Gambling on fights is so lucrative that even the brass blades rarely arrest anyone caught. There's just too many of them. Between the prize money from sanctioned fights and the illegal gambling, Ul'dah's Coliseum is a gold mine that they'd never happily put a stop to. In the eyes of the city-state, if men and women wish to do battle, they can do so on the blood sands, making any acts of violence outside the arena punishable by extreme measures. So it was that the once peaceful caverns of Halatali became abuzz with the sounds of up-and-coming fighters, as well as the roars and cries of caged monsters. This was the normal for a long time, and Halatali became host to all sorts of monstrosities and acts of brutality. Every cage, every weapon, every wound was created in the name of entertaining the audience of Uldah's Colosseum. This made what happened next all the more horrific. Soon, the Garlean Empire would begin its invasion, and then Bahamut would soon be released onto Eorzea. With the destruction caused by his rampage, there were cutbacks, and one of the first things Uldah sacrificed was entertainment. Afraid for their lives and wishing for the safety of Uldah's high walls, Colosseum organizers and all members of the Gladiators Guild simply abandoned Halatali to its fate. Anyone or anything that was caged, trapped, or chained within these halls was left there. Many creatures died slow and painful deaths due to starvation and dehydration, but some monsters managed to break free, using their fellow captors for sustenance. Understandably, the pain and suffering all of this caused started to negatively affect the ambient aether within Halatali. Since souls are made up of aether, their pain and suffering became Halatali's pain, as they passed on into the ethereal realm or lingered in torment, giving the caves a grim and deadly air. This negativity, of course, attracted voidsent like moths to a flame, allowing lower ring voidsent to more easily enter into our world and infest Halatali. Now voidsent were running freely, just like the now freed monsters. Between the roaming beasts, hostile voidsent, and vengeful spirits, the once peaceful rooms of Halatali had become a death trap. And it wouldn't be until a group of adventurers were commissioned to clear it out that some level of peace would return here. But eventually these halls were indeed cleared out by said adventurers. The voidsent were cut off, restless spirits put to rest, and the beasts that had dominated the caves were cut down. But seeing as the caves were back in Uldah's hands, the Gladiators Guild and the associated Colosseum was ready to reignite the flames of combat that once burned in the deepest chambers of Halatali. Bahamut's wrath had forced them to abandon everything quickly, but instead of letting Halatali rest, it was made back into the training grounds it was before the calamity. Complete with fighters, young and old, as well as monsters of various sizes and strengths. Now, Halatali is back to what many gladiators would call its former glory. It's even become a place where Uldah's most powerful prisoners may engage with willing opponents in combat, giving them a chance to get out of their cell for a short time, if only to do battle with others. And that is the complete history of Halatali, from its peaceful and tranquil origins all the way up to its current renewed and battle-ready state. Uldah would of course tell you that Halatali is run as ethically as possible, only subjecting those who wish to fight to brutal combat, and only caging monsters that would have wreaked havoc on the world and its people. However, the 7th Umbral Calamity tells a different story. They swiftly abandoned something that was considered too dangerous and costly to maintain, leaving a festering wound on our world that needed to be cauterized and cleaned years later. Here's hoping they learn from this lesson. That being said, our world can be dangerous, and nature can indeed be violent. So training grounds like this renewed dungeon might become more and more necessary in the days to come. So, Halatali is likely to be a staging ground for many, many more contests of strength and discipline for the years to come. And if combat is your sucker, I'd recommend visiting these caves very soon. Until next we meet, stay safe, my friends. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Big shout out to my patrons, Rovakis, Monsolo97, Potato, Runatir, The Yellow Couch, Valen, and Vivalis Oma. If you want to see more lore content in the future, share this with your friends. My dream is to share as much as I find with as many people as possible. And if you do end up helping me, thank you so much in advance. And have a wonderful day.